Today's story is about a man who helped an already well-known group achieve icon status. He had a significant impact on Motown's first 2 Grammy wins. Today's story is about the first replacement for David Ruffin, the man with the golden voice, Mr. Dennis Edwards. Now before we get started in today's video, please be sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and push that notification bell to stay up to date. Now without further ado, let's cue that intro. Ursula Fowler and Reverend Dennis Edwards Sr. welcomed Dennis Wayne Edwards Jr. on February 3, 1943 in Fairfield, Alabama. Paul Williams and Eddie Kendricks, future members of the Temptations, are from Birmingham, which is only 8 miles away from where Edwards was born. When Edwards was barely 2 years old, he already started to begin his legacy in singing, where he would sing in his father's church. By the age of 7, his family would relocate to Detroit, Michigan, and during his teen years, Edwards, he would progress from participating in the choir to taking the role of the choir director. As a kid, Edwards, he would join a gospel group named the Mighty Clouds of Joy. And as a teenager, he was not only the church choir director and a member of a gospel group, but he also found the time to study music at the Detroit Conservatory of Music. Now, when you reach that certain age, like many teenagers, you begin to become a little rebellious. And growing up in a religious home and being the son of a minister, he was forbidden to listen and sing in secular music. Thus, when he grew an interest in having a career in that style of music, his parents would be quite disapproving. In 1961, Edwards, he would form a jazz soul group called Dennis Edwards and the Fireballs. That same year, Edwards, he would record 2 tracks for the Detroit-based label International Soulville Records. These singles was I Didn't Have To, But I Did. I didn't have to wake up to the ring of the phone. And Johnny on the Spot. When you need me anytime, baby, don't you hesitate. At this point, Edwards realized that his singing career began to become stale. So he would enlist into the military. Now Edwards, he would serve in the U.S. Army from 1961 to 1963, where he would spend most of his time living in Europe. After he got back to Detroit, Edwards, he started to play anywhere he could to get back out in the circuit. In 1966, Edwards, he auditioned for Motown, where he impressed them enough to secure a contract. Although, in Motown eyes, he was only talented enough to be a work for hire. But they was paying him $500 a week, which is about $4,800 in today's money.
One day, I never will forget James Jamerson. Yeah. He asked me to come to Motown to take an audition. So I went down and I took an audition with Mr. Gordy, and I never will forget it was Love Is a Hurting Thing by Lou Rawls. And Mr. Gordy was one of those kind of guys, he'd look at you, you don't know whether he liked you or not. He just see. I didn't hear from him for a while. So finally, they called me down to Motown, and they said, well, we're going to sign you to a contract, but we're not going to record you. It's a true story. I never will forget it. And I said, well, why? And they said, we're going to give you $500 a week. I said, oh, okay.
He would grab the Temptations' attention when the Contours would open up for them in 1967.
I was a reserve, and I didn't know it. So when one of the Contours got sick, the lead singer, they called me one day and they said, we need you to go out with the Contours.
At this period of time, the Temptations, they began to have problems with David Ruffin. So they began to look around to recruit.
The first professional show I ever did, we opened up for a young group called the Temptations. Right. And that's when I really got the itch. I met Eddie and Dave, and I seen them looking at me in the wings. I said, is that good or bad?
Eddie Kendricks and Otis Williams was the ones who took notice of Edwards. During that same year, Edwards, he would leave the Contours and return as a work for hire. He wanted to break out of his contract and gamble on himself, especially when Holland Dozier and Holland departed Motown and founded Viticus Records. They also offered Edwards a solo deal. He would soon change his mind when Ruffin had informed them that he was quitting the Temptations and they were seeking for him to replace him, also giving him his blessing.
About 3 o'clock one morning, he had came to my house and he opened the door and I said, "David, it's 3 o'clock, man." And he says, "I'm gonna leave the Temptations." Although it was a great opportunity, I tried my best to talk him into staying with the Temptations. Next morning, they called me down, true enough, and they asked me, they said, "How would you like to be a member of the Temptations?" And I never will forget what I told them. I said, "Well, I would love to." I said, "But I want to be accepted by Eddie, Otis, Paul, and Melvin."
Right.
I said, because, and also I want to let them know I can never be a David Ruffin.
Dennis Edwards was officially announced as a member of the Temptations on July 9th, 1968. Edwards' first month was difficult, not due to poor performance, but because Ruffin wanted his job back and would disrupt whenever he could. The group then would become wary of this and decided to give him one more chance and exchange a promise to allow Edwards to pursue a solo career and giving Ruffin another chance. Ruffin, he would blow this opportunity the very next day and never rehire Edwards, which brought an end to the Class of 5 era. Edwards' voice was very distinct for Ruffin, and his voice caused the group's sound to alternate. The best way to characterize Edwards' voice was as gruff and gritty, like a preacher's voice. The label saw that they needed some new sound, so they would partner them up with a rising songwriter named Norman Whitfield. The world was introduced to the psychedelic soul era thanks to Edwards' leadership during this time. Edwards' first tenure with the group had ran from 1967 through 1977. Edwards, he was seen lead on many tracks including the 1968 single Cloud 9.
The childhood part of my life wasn't very pretty. See, I was born and raised in
The 1969 single I Can't Get Next to You.
I can turn the gray sky blue.
The 1970 single Ball of Confusion.
The only person talking about love and brother is the preacher. And it's
The 1972 single Papa Was a Rolling Stone.
it was the 3rd of September. That day I'll always remember.
And the 1975 single Shaky Ground, among plenty more singles. When Edwards joined this group who was already established, he had some enormous shoes to fill of a beloved member. Edwards' lead vocals on Cloud 9 and Papa Was a Rolling Stone had run Motown their first 2 Grammys, which set a new standard. At this time, Edwards, he was engaged to Yvonne Gerling, who was the lead vocalist of the Quiet Elegance, who backed up the Temptations on tour. As Edwards was pushed to the front of the group, mainly on the Wings of Love album, Otis believed this was damaging the group and blamed it for the group's declining in popularity. When the album had failed, Otis had decided to dismiss Edwards and replace him with Louis Price. Edwards attempted a solo career but failed, and due to the failure of the Temptations' tenure at Atlantic Records, Edwards, he would rejoin the group in 1980. The second time Edwards had worked with the group was from 1980 to 1984. During this time, he had drew a closer relationship with David Ruffin and Eddie Kendricks during the group's 1982 reunion tour, which Motown had organized. Nevertheless, Edwards, like many other singers, had issues. According to reports, Edwards, he had a serious cocaine addiction that caused him to miss important rehearsals and performances. As a result, he was dismissed again in 1984. This time, Edwards' solo career was restarted by Motown and it was rather successful. His biggest hit of his whole career, Don't Look Any Further, became a major song.
someone to count on in a world ever changing.
This song is so significant to the hip-hop scene as it is sampled by several well-known songs including Eric B. Rakim, Paid in Full, singles, Hit 'Em Up,
First off, fuck your bitch in the click you claim.
and How Do You Want It.
Love the way you activate your hips and push your ass out. Got a nigga wanting it so bad I'm about to pass out. Wanna
Junior Mafia's Get Money,
How you figure that your team can affect my cream? Gold and platinum plaque since I stepped on the scene, nah, I mean.
and a new song, Peasy, 2 Million Up, among many more songs.
If we locked in, ain't no switching up. Brody came home, went to pick him up.
Edwards' debut album was released in 1984 under the same name, and it had peaked at number 48 on the Billboard 200 charts, number 2 on the Billboard Top R&B Album charts, also peaking at number 91 on the UK charts. This album had one hit single, but Edwards was able to achieve 2 non-charted singles to obtain regular radio play with You're Mine
It's not long enough, and I can never stay away.
and Another Place in Time.
Did fate bring us together just to see what we.
Following that year, he released his second album titled Coolin' Out, which featured hits like Amanda,
Sitting here looking out at the ocean, thinking of her as I go through the motions. Living,
and the title song.
sitting in my chair, I'm just laying back.
About 1987, the Temptations began to have troubles, mostly with Otis and Ali Wilson, who was relieved from the group when Edwards made his third comeback. But this comeback, Edwards made history by being the only member to serve the group in 3 different distinct periods. In 1989, he would leave the group once more, but Edwards would team up with Kendricks and Ruffin as the former lead of the Temptations. The trio, they would go on tour and they would record together, although no material was released. Edwards would collab with Kendrick in a song that was very up-tempo in 1990, but to the die-hard Temptation fans, they didn't like it because to them it was too hip-hop. This song will be known as Get It While It's Hot.
So get it while it's hot. Get it while it's hot.
After Kendricks and Ruffin had passed away, Edwards he was forced to end the trio's album. He would run into legal problems when he started his own band titled Dennis Edwards and the Temptations. Now, although he has been legally barred from using the group's name since January of 1999, Edwards he had found a walkaround by renaming the group The Temptations Review, featuring Dennis Edwards. Paul Williams Jr., David C., Mike Polito, and Chris Arnold was among the members of Edwards' group. In the 1998 miniseries The Temptations, Charles Lay had played Edwards. In 1989, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a member of the Temptations, and in 2013, himself and the Temptations was inducted into the Rhythm and Blues Hall of Fame, also being inducted again in 2015 as he was inducted this time as a member of the Temptations Review. Now, many people may not know that Edwards had previously dated Irma Franklin, who he would eventually dump for her younger sister Aretha. Aretha and Franklin, they were so in love with each other. He actually served as the inspiration for her song Daydreaming in 1972. When Dennis had met Ruth Porter while dating Aretha, he would leave Aretha and marry Ruth in 1977. Issa will be the couple's only child. Now, according to Ruth's book, she alleged that Dennis had a drug problem and was very abusive to her. And she also claimed that he refused to fulfill his obligations as a parent. Only 2 days before his 75th birthday, on February 1st, 2018, Edwards, he will unfortunately pass away.
One of the emperors of soul, former Temptations lead singer Dennis Edwards, died here in Chicago last night. 2 investigator Brad Edwards broke the story and has more on his life and his passing.
Chicago PD at the time was looking into his death. The Healthcare of Consortium of Illinois had filed an emergency of protection several months before his passing. It claims that the singer was neglected and abused by his wife.
Meantime, Chicago police are investigating the death of Temptations lead singer Dennis Edwards. There are allegations involving his wife, who spoke today to 2 investigator Brad Edwards.
Were you able to see your husband in his final days?
No, I was not.
The man who crooned the world over died last week at Mercy Hospital. His wife, she told me in a phone interview, was prohibited from seeing him since January 3rd.
My husband was a wonderful man.
2 investigators obtained this order of protection. It alleged wife Brenda Edwards attempted to suffocate her husband by holding him face down on a bed. We posed that question.
Tried to suffocate him.
It's untrue.
She spoke to us from St. Louis, where the Edwards lived until moving here after Mr. Edwards suffered a stroke.
Now, Dennis Edwards, like many singers, had their ups and their downs, but nevertheless, Dennis Edwards is a legend. Like I said earlier, he came into a group that was already beloved and well established and made it an iconic group. No matter if you love David Ruffin, Ali Wilson, or any other lead singers, Dennis Edwards set high standards by having the Temptations be the first ever act on Motown win a Grammy Award. Out of many legends that came and left Motown's door, the Temptations, along with Dennis Edwards, made history by becoming the first group to win Motown a Grammy.